Sasol, we've got oil trading at the moment just above $70 a barrel, and it seems to fluctuate around that level, give or take $2 or $3. Your forecasts for Sasol, is this one perhaps something to pick up at these levels?
I think in the short term, the fundamentals surrounding Sasol are not very supportive of sort of a 6-month view. But, you know, we've seen such a significant sell-off, especially in these commodities and obviously your resource stocks. But, you know, for me, I think today a stock like Sasol actually stood out as quite a firm sort of buying opportunity. You might see a little bit more downside, you know, maybe 10 Rand, but I'd like to see a move in Sasol in the short term, sort of back to that 300 level and possibly beyond towards 310 Rand. So that year I was looking at nibbling a couple of Sasol today.
Two key points of reference for Sasol are number one, the oil price, and number two, the direction of the rand. At this level, do you think that fundamentally we are supported at an oil price of around about $70 a barrel?
I think it's fair to say that. I think, you know, we did see a huge spike last year as we moved into the credit crisis, and it obviously pulled back from those levels all the way back down under 50. And now we sit, personally, I see it as a fair value between sort of 65 and 75. And you might find that it's sort of range trades between that 65 and 75 level. And we've seen the Sasol come from that 320 odd level all the way down to this 265 or under 265 today. And for me, I mean, it's really just too much too quickly, and I think there could be a short-term trading opportunity where you just see a short-term spike to the upside, and Sasol's in a very tight range. And again, looking forward, the fundamentals are not really supporting you know, significant and strong growth and upward trend in Sasol, but you might be able just to play that range between 365 and 310.
And look at this, Aspen at the top of the top 40, up 4.5% today, and we've got to make mention of the fact that this was the best performing stock for 2009. It rallied 117%, and it continues to give more upside. Closing at a 70 Rand, that positive trading update saying that headline earnings per share for the first half would be up between 30 and 40%. What do you make of Aspen?
Well, we've always discussed it, and Aspen has always been one of my top picks. And again, like you said, just shows you in a credit crisis, a lot of people get sick. And, you know, the share has done phenomenally well. They did give a very positive trading update today. And, you know, it reacted very well in a market that got sold off sharply after lunchtime. So I continue to be bullish on the stock. I would like to see it come back from that 70 Rand level towards about 66, 67, but continues to be defensive and should show some good fundamental returns.
The US just a short while ago, Dow Jones Industrial Average down about 1.5%. How much has that got to do with the capital reserve requirement news out of China today being implemented?
Well, I think at this stage, you've got to sort of ask yourself, where does the market sit in terms of a sentiment point of view? Sure, you're going to have fundamentals that drive this market, as well as technical traders pushing this market from buying to selling or wherever it's going. But the overall overriding factor in this market is generally sentiment. And last year, you saw the sentiment very swayed towards the upside. It sort of topped towards the end of this year and early this year. And then personally, in my mind, I feel the sentiment to sort of move to the downside, and the bias in this market is more looking for a sell-off. So any news that's released in this market at the moment, the market is, in my opinion, sort of looking for a reason to sell off. So that kind of news flow really just acted as a catalyst for a lot of traders and investors to take their profit off the table and just you know, sort of retract themselves from the market. And obviously that induces a bit of panic selling and a bit of overreaction, which in my mind in the short term could offer some buying opportunity.
First Rand came down 2 1/3% at 17 Rand 64. We had the likes of MTN down 2%, closing at 110 Rand. There's much debate about MTN, and I've got very divergent views, especially of this last week. Sam Hooley, head of equities at Investec Asset Management South Africa, is saying he's betting on the telecommunications stocks right now, and MTN obviously one of the biggest players in that territory as a result of the fact that they've lagged the recovery that we've seen in other stocks, and he doesn't believe that they are ex-growth. Wayne McCurry also looking at buying the likes of an MTN, but David Shapiro on the other end of the spectrum saying telcos in South Africa, ex-growth, not going to touch them. We need to now switch out of these, or a while ago, in fact, he switched out of these into the likes perhaps of a Naspers and even an Altec in the IT space.
MTN, look, it's a very well-traded stock, very highly liquid. But for me, MTN, I'm bullish on the stock. I feel, you know, it sort of hit that 105 level, held that level, and in a market that sold off quite hard and quite drastically, it's actually showed very strong defensive characteristics. And I'm still bullish on the growth strategy going into Africa. And although it's not an appetite for a lot of your risk-averse investors, it sort of fits into a little bit of a higher risk category than the rest of your blue chip stocks. But I'm still bullish on the growth, and I think that the Africa story should start to play out. And, you know, looking at the global environment, I think that growth should be around the corner, and we should see some steady uptick there. Although we are seeing a bit of digestion, it's welcome digestion, but, you know, I'm bullish on the story.
Looking at the gold stocks, and I know they're not among your favorite picks in the market, but Harmony out with news recently, returning to profitability. We had DRD Gold also returning to profitability. We've potentially got a higher gold price to factor into the equation, and as long as we're not wiped out by Rand's strength, something like Harmony, could it be potentially offering value?
I don't know if value is the right word, but I do think there could be some potential upside from these levels. And what you've got to remember, especially with these gold companies, is in order to turn their balance sheets into profitability, they had to go through a huge cost-cutting exercise, closing down shafts, etc., etc. And you know, obviously the Rand moving against them didn't help them well. And obviously we sort of have an outlook of a Rand and possibly a blowout, you know, towards 8 Rand and beyond. You know, it could benefit it. So looking forward sort of 6 months, I do think a stock like Harmony could benefit from the blowout of the Rand, the profitability that it sits at now, and hopefully the gold price can hold its level looking forward.
Let's get a quick update on the market, and then we'll come back to the discussion. It's 9 minutes past 5 o'clock. The Dow Jones Industrial Average recovering from its lows, down 1 1/3%. FTSE 100, 2/3% to the negative. DAX in Frankfurt giving up nearly 0.5%, and the CAC in Paris 2/3% to the bad. The local market closing today, 26,262 points. We're down 1/3%, losing just 88 points on the day. Not bad when we've got that negative movement or negative sentiment on the international front. Looking at the sectors now, JSE top 40, 1/3% to the bad. Resource 20 giving up 1/4% almost. Financial 15, 3/4% to the negative. And the industrial 25 down just over 1/3%. Commodities, gold down $6.70. Platinum down $22. What we can be assured about at the moment, it appears, is continued volatility on commodity prices. Brent crude trading below $73 a barrel, and the euro dollar sitting at 136.37. Again, we can be assured of volatility on the euro dollar. A short while ago we were trading at the 135.80 level. Turning attention to the local currency, dollar rand 7.70, euro rand 10.50, pound rand 12.08, dollar yen at 89.93. No surprises on the levels that we're seeing on the market at the moment. We held up pretty well, managing to ward off much of that negative sentiment, closing down only 1/3%. Next week, are we going to have to hold on to our hats?
Again, it comes down to a question of what the overriding sentiment in the market is at the moment. And we've seen quite a strong rally sort of into this week, although, like you mentioned, you know, it's very volatile, it's very choppy. People are unsure which way this market is going. But I favour a little bit of a sell-off as we start next week and hopefully start to pick up from those levels. But it's a very choppy trading environment. And again, just to mention that volatility and looking at that volatility index as an indicator to me, you know, that for me is a fear factor gauge. And
where are we sitting at the moment on the VIX? Do you have an indication?
Just above, I think it's around 27 at this stage. So it is starting to pick up and move towards that 30 level, and did spike above that. So.
And the South African volatility index, the SAVI, are we following suit?
We're following suit there. You know, look, I mean, we've, like you said, held up pretty resiliently compared to the rest of the global markets, but there is an overriding uneasy sentiment out there. And again, I reiterate, markets are actually looking for a reason to sell off. So, you know, I favour a sell-off as we start next week.
You've said that Sasol is your top pick on the market. What would you be selling out of right now? What do you think is really looking expensive and perhaps worth taking money off the table for?
It's difficult to say what I'd be selling out of because, you know, when the market spiked sort of as we went into the middle of January, you know, that was the time to sort of be looking at selling. But at the moment, if I wouldn't actually be doing too much. You know, I'd rather be sitting on a bit of cash and looking at chipping away at some of my long-term sort of blue chip stocks, the likes of Sasol, some Anglos a little bit lower down if you can get them. Hopefully you do see a little bit of a sell-off and use that weakness to buy. But at the moment, you know, the market's corrected already. We have seen some significant retracement. So the levels are not convincing for me to say sort of sell. You know, I always sort of maintain a philosophy that you buy into weakness when the sentiment is low and sell into strength when the sentiment is high.